Alright, hello friends. Today we're going to be sculpting in ZBrush. We're going to open up ZBrush. We're going to get this direct project. Wrong one. Go back to Lightbox. No, I don't want to save that. And I'm just going to get to sculpting. So, I'm going to go up here to the brushes. I'm going to hit BM for the move brush. And we're just going to start sculpting something today. So, let's get started. Alright. I'm going to enable Sculptris Pro Mode. Sculptris Pro Mode allows me to add infinite typology to whatever I'm sculpting so that will make it easier for me to move this mesh around and get to where I need to be going. I'm going to start to extrude the bottom portion out, and I'm going to start to work on creating a humanoid torso for right now. And I'm just moving back and forth, setting up my general shapes, trying to get a feel for what I want to sculpt before I go in and I start sculpting anything too hairy, major. Get the situation, make the torso a little longer. And the main goal is just to get my base shapes down for the end piece. So I'm just creating a space for the rib cage, this upper portion, a space for the hips at the lower portion, and I'm figuring out the curvature of the spine. Just using that move brush. This down, but I still want the angle where the collarbone and space is a little bit farther out. Just moving that out. I'm going to hit B for brushes again. I'm actually going to hit my clay buildup brush, and I'm actually going to start hitting Alt to remove the material above this upper head, just so I can get that angle of where the collarbone is, and I can try to feel it out. We're creating a couple cross marks. Right now I'm just marking general areas where we're going to fill in later. And we just slowly build up our mesh this way. Start trying to figure out where the lats hook in and where the hips are set up and placed. And it's just about getting smaller shapes, which eventually become bigger shapes, down very smoothly and effectively. Slowly just getting the space needed. Slowly working on getting the general shape of the glutes. We're not going to get too into the muscle structure just yet. I just want to get enough of a feel for this model to start moving it around. The general space is down. I know it. Case now to add a little bit of flatness to that plane, I'm gonna scroll this little wheel down, and I'm gonna hit Alt, and I'm just gonna move on up the spine. By doing so, I'm gonna create the space needed to see these various smaller shape details that eventually will come out more. I don't want to add any more detail than that, because then I'll get too focused on the detail. At risk of getting too focused on the detail. Now I'm just going to start working on the legs. Bring the legs out to where I need them to be. It's a little too extreme of a zoom. If I widen this out when I hit the smooth button, it's going to smooth much more evenly around the mesh, and that's going to change the general spacing of it. This here is like holding a tube of icing scooper. Basically, the wider it is, the more extreme the variation is, and the more weighted movement inside ZBrush. We're going to now move and straighten out this pelvis area. This pelvis has gotten way too long at the bottom, but hasn't. There, I need to be straightened out, and then I need to add more on the sides of the glutes. We'll start breaking down the individual muscles there in a little bit. Right now, I just want to get the general feel for that. And now, to build up some of the general smaller thigh base shapes, I'm going to start building this up this way. I could actually use multiple meshes and bully them in if I wanted to as well, but I like to just continue to build up. I'm going to follow the natural pattern of the thigh muscles, which actually connect below the knee up to the hips and wrap around this way, and then there's some more wrapping going around this way. And the reason I'm going to try to follow those muscle lines is that it's going to allow me to have a much more accurate overall shape. Then I'm going to hit the move button, this out more, and scale it down and move it out more in front of the body as the thighs project out. I can also hit the space bar to get that same exact menu up, and so I'm going to do that. And that has all of my little buttons up there, and I'm just going to continue to mold in that direction. We can grab the inside of the thighs here and pull them out and move them around, and now we're slowly getting a reasonable real midsection. Alright. Now that I've straightened those out a bit more, I'm going to grab that move brush again, and I'm just going to yoink them back down. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them in and yoink them down. Now, your knees have a counterbalance measurement. Your knees are actually tilted in, then your ankles tilt out, and then your feet tilt back in again. Zoom tight. So that's something to keep in mind while making these shapes. We're not just trying to get the general portion out. We're going to get all of them out with space here because I need a much wider radius on that smooth, otherwise it's just going to destroy all that geometry I moved up there. And that's the thing about the smooth brush you need to realize is that it is can be destructive. Come in here with the clay buildup brush. I'm just going to build this out here more. I almost was tempted to bring out another spear, but for right now I think this will be fine. Just enough to get a general armature down. And then we're going to grab this move brush and we're going to move it back that way to align the knees more accurately and to align the thighs a little more accurately. We'll get into adding in those extra muscles later and getting those final level detail. Now I'm going to do one little tiny pull there to get the collarbone kind of situated out, and then I'm going to shrink it in even more to grab the shoulder blades and the arms out of it. So now I have two kind of separate areas, an inner armpit area and an inner hand area. Right, that radius is too small. Hit S, bring it out. Same trick again for the elbows. Let's see if I can do it. Except for we want to enlarge the elbows. So we're going to grab this clay buildup and we're going to enlarge the space. I did that yesterday in a different way and it was kind of cool because I had to get these conical effects, but I'm not entirely sure how I did it, but it worked out quite nice. We get the move brush. We're just going to move this guy back in and move the forms out. And we're just going to stretch out the forms a bit. There, there. I did not mean to that button right there. I hit W. W is for that. Then you get Q to get back in the scripting brush, or to hit S again. S is to size and scale. W is to get into movement mode to move other objects and items around. At least when we're talking about ZBrush. I'm going to leave the hands alone for now. And I'm going to start working on the neck/head region by grabbing the center mass, widening out my beam, and pulling yet again. This will allow me to get a decent neck, and I will widen out the shape of the neck and the general structure of it, just enough to get the bare minimum of spacing down. And now I'm going to pull forward and down to where I want my jaw to be, and I'm just going to start pulling out around that because that's the way I want to do it today. The main thing is just staying loose and remembering your basic shapes. Your head is basically 2 eggs, your torso is 2 other eggs facing in a slightly different direction with slightly wider shoulders for men and slightly wider around the hips for women. We're going to build up this shoulder blade and this skull, and we're just going to build it nice and smoothly. Alright, now I'm going to pinch in where the temple is, and now we can get to our next level of detail. First, I'm going to zoom out though. I'm going to hit this frame button. That's going to allow me to put it in center mass. I'm going to take my index finger and thumb, and I'm actually just going to put it on my screen, and I'm going to measure how far down it is. And if I add a hand, it comes out to about here. I think we'll be good on our proportions, because it should come down to about halfway down the thigh, past the hip bone, in between it and the knee. And so I need to move it just a little bit more to get that sort of distance, and it should be 5 to 7 heads high, but right now I think she's close enough. At least if we're going to do something more stylized. If I was doing something more realized, I might come in and I might use some of the measuring base tools. For example, if we go into the move tool and we hit the secondary widget, we can actually use this gimbal as a measuring tool. But I'm not going to do that right now, mostly because I forgot how it works, because I don't like it. Alright, we're going to bring this in here, straighten this out, and we're just going to start making sure that I actually have a rib cage here. So the way I'm going to get that rib cage shaped down a little bit more is by first building up the front and cutting out the sternum by hitting Alt across the front portion here. By straightening out where the sternum is, or the front or the chest is, I can start to get that plane shape to move, and just by building up the area around it, I can get a much smoother looking torso. And I can slowly start coming in here where the armpit is and the shoulder blade is, and I'll just keep hammering that away. And I'm going to jump where I feel is necessary. Not. And the main goal right now is just getting that rib cage in there for the character. Because even if you're doing a stylized character, they still need the ability to breathe. So you need them to have either ribs or gills or some sort of breathing apparatus. So we're going to get the rib cage down and that plane change down. We're going to come in here with a move brush because I think I actually need to flatten out the sides a bit more. And I think it'll be a little bit easier to pinch them. And pull them forward a bit more like so, across the entire chest area, and to push in towards where the sternum would be, structure would be. Gonna shrink that down a bit, bring it over here, and I'm gonna move it as is necessary. I'm gonna straighten out this skull a bit more, and I'm gonna give her a slightly more narrow jawline. Possibly even a little too narrow. Alright. Now I've done that, I'm going to use my damn standard brush, my rake brush, my damn standard, so I'm going to hit D. I'm going to press B, then D for damn standard. I'm going to pull out the damn standard brush. My damn standard brush I use almost like a grease brush, or another one to mark out areas where I want to move further in later, and to get some general structure from where the detail will be eventually. For example, I'm actually going to wrap around here, and the reason I'm going to do that is because eventually I'm going to want to flatten out where the abdominals are. I'm just going to go across it in these little cross hatching marks, and what that does is it allows me to flatten out the form and then smooth it down, which allows me to get a better understanding of the underlining mesh in between. It also allows me to come in here and make deep cuts where the structure will occur. Cool. And then I'm going to come in here with the move brush, and I just use the move brush to redistribute the mass. So the damn standard is subtractive based sculpting, whereas the move brush is additive and subtractive, and the clay buildup is additive. We are adding shape to our forms, and that's how I use those two in conjunction with one another. On this neck area, I need to really fix this, so we're going to come in here, and we're going to just slowly start hitting Alt, and I'm going to start using my clay buildup brush on the destructive line, slowly removing the planes around the neck area in order to get this area. Then I'm going to start slowly working them up through the back as if I'm building up those upper back muscles. Then going to build the actual planes for the scapula, which we'll get into a minute. But essentially, I just draw a small pizza-like shape from the back half to the front. But it's really more like a football-like shape with the upper area and the downward area where they come together and scalp out. Some of the other rib cage is this almost smooth, squarish circle from the front. Now I'm going to start adding in the lats, which come up underneath there and move around the general shape. And I'm just slowly refining these shapes. This muscle here comes down and it runs into the pelvis, but it also runs into the back, like so. And it kind of gets cut off by the latissimus dorsi, which is this triangular muscle that comes off over here. And they actually hip all the way down into your hips. So, yeah. If you do it right, it will look something like that. Now I'm going to start marking where the breast should be. They should hang down this way. Just there. And I'm going to start slowly building up the pec major area because we also have pecs. And we're just going to square that out. And we're just going to build them in the way I like to do it. Slowly build up the pec minor and major. Which again is this kite-like shape. It goes into the front here and locks in the front of the sternum, and it pulls your shoulder blade. So what I do is I just build up the muscle like it's pulling your shoulder blade, and I wrap it around the rib cage into that center point. And I just think, where is the muscle anchored, and how wide and how big is that squished football shape? And as long as I get that squished football shape right-ish around this area, I'll have a better time with the breast, which will go over it. We're then going to come up here and add that neckline a bit more, and I just now realized that I have no delts on this character. So the delts are 3 footballs. There is 1 football here, connected from the inside of the shoulder blade next to it, down, and it comes out, and it makes this tiny little football shape. And we can actually come in here with the damn standard brush, and we can make it a little more extreme. Then we have this other football, which comes out and around here ish, and they kind of conjoin together in actuality. So it's just one. It's 3 footballs making 1 giant football shape, like so. So there's another football around here, and it comes in, and then there's the lat, which comes up underneath it. So I need to just straighten that out. Now you can kind of see where I'm going to build up and smooth by going in with the clay build-up brush. I'm just going to slowly build up that lat, that tiny little football there. There it fits and wraps around. I'm going to grab my move brush because the center of mass of that football is more towards the top than it is towards the bottom, and we can just bring it in, not like that, and we can just slowly start moving it out. What's cool about the move brush is that I can pull from the volume here, that was down all the way up here, and I'm going to move it up here in one single stroke versus rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding over and over again. Anyway, that football-like shape should overlap the delt. The delt is a football that goes underneath this delt muscle, and so you want to actually go in and kind of define that in some way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sculpt it out, and I'm going to build over top of it. I'm just going to grab this little clay buildup brush, and I'm going to move over top of that deltoid. And by doing so, I get proper anatomy and power muscle. Even if you're changing the proportions around, just getting this little bit of variation makes your characters look a lot more believable, because you kind of intuitively know like how your anatomy is, even if you don't know it visibly, you know it from like a common sense thing. So this is going to move your shoulder forward, and this moves your shoulder in the other 3 dimensions. Now we need to add the serratus muscle in a minute, but let's pull out this lat a bit more, and let's start defining the scapula a bit more. So from a 2D perspective, it's just a triangular pizza-like shape. That's all really the scapula is. However, on the 3-dimensional plane, there's some divots. It goes in more slightly above the shoulder in what I can only refer to as kind of a crushed bean kind of look around here. And so we're just going to shed out, and it flares up at the top. So we're going to try to add that to it. We're also going to try to remove some of these inner areas because it gets smaller and thinner as it punches the back, but it's got this almost lip on it. And if you feel around your back, you'll be able to actually feel that kind of pseudo lip in your actual muscles. Now right here I've brought it out too far, and it needs to kind of square in the other direction. So I'm going to just square the scapula out, and it's too far in on that section, and it's too far out on that section. Just going to bring it down. And I might be using the wrong terminology. This might not actually be your scapular hindsight, but regardless, your back muscles, not this. But we just want to get that shape more triangular, more thinner, more structured, and we want it to be more pointed down, because these neck muscles in your upper neck come more straight down and will actually overlap and cover it to some degree, depending upon your level of muscularity. I'm also going to bring this neck and head back, and the way I can do that is I can continue to zoom in and out, or I can grab my entire object and I can just shrink it a bit. ZBrush doesn't have an infinite zoom or general location because it runs on Cotillions, so sometimes you gotta do stuff like shrink your model in order to get your brush size to get past its minimum or maximum. But the benefits outweigh the cons on that, because what you do is, because it's programmed using Cotillions, it can just keep adding more and more detail as long as you have the RAM space on your device to fire it. Whereas if you're running in Blender or Maya or some other CGI software out there, and you're performing some sort of sculpting application, because they're built around vectors, which are these little lines you see here, which ZBrush doesn't actually have. They can only move and reflect light so much, whereas this is actual pixels on your screen being calculated live, built around their location to other pixels in a 4-dimensional array built around numbers that represent things like the reflection, surface, and shape. It's what gives ZBrush the edge when it comes to sculpting. It's really neat from a math perspective. Anyway, back to the sculpting. We're going to get these general football shapes down, and we're just going to keep moving. Moving and moving. And moving. We're going to straighten out that stone a bit because it's not a fully round yet. Boom, there we go. Now, we gotta decide how large do I want the lat, and how much serratus do I want to give. The serratus will only be visible on people who are in very low body fat masses, or at least relative over their body. What the serratus does is it pulls the shoulder blade forward, and it's 6 little teeny tiny muscles that go up and down like so, in a zigzag-like pattern. But you're only really gonna see, I think, like 3 of them. Well, we're gonna come in here. Hopefully, I'm right on that. And we're just gonna start carving it out with the damn standard brush because I didn't build the rib cage. And so, because I didn't build a rib cage around it, I don't necessarily know where to lock them in. So I'm just using the damn standard brush now to kind of repair and correct that mistake of mine. And that's kind of the beauty of just sculpting daily, is you learn how to make little things like this go down quicker and easier. I'm not going to make her super skinny because I don't want to have to work super hard on the serratus, but I do want it to be there. And so I'm limiting the divot between the pelvis area and that too, because that affects the general fat levels. But we are going to have a strong upper and lower lines like so. So we're going to have it partially visible, but I'm not going to have it to the point where it's showing outside of there. This is actually one of the most impressive muscle groups to have, like, on your body, because you either have to have low BMI or you have to be either really, really strong or have a very, very low body fat percentage to see it. Some people have naturally larger than others, and there's only so many exercises you can do or walk it, and there's really little to no way to isolate it except for on the heavy bag. So if you see someone with a strong serratus, don't fuck with them. Alright, now I'm going to start building up that collarbone a little bit more, and I'm not going to worry about building it too big or too strong, but basically the collarbone actually has this divot and this loop in the center of the neck, and it's really hard to get right because it varies so much between person to person. But my main goal is just to make that center loop from where the sternum usually is, and then just to pull out and straighten almost like it's fitting over the rib cage. And as long as you have it structured as if it could be the uppermost bone to the rib cage, securing your shoulder blade just slightly above it, and it coming in above your deltoid and in around here, and as long as you have your deltoid covering up this crease here, it should be pretty good, and you should be able to not have any limitations or issues with that area. But this is the hardest bone to get right, because while it is a bony landmark, it varies so much from person to person, because its job is to protect your shoulder blade and allow it to move consistently with the shoulder. So we want to make sure that it's straight above the ribs and has a high enough angle. On female characters, it's even harder because the clavicle bone is smaller on women, so it's even harder to see if you got it right. But basically, as long as it's projecting out enough and it's pushing up, we should be fine. And I'm actually going to bring these ribs down just a bit more so that she can breathe a little bit better, because I think I flattened them out a little too much on the z-axis. And I'm going to bring out these the abdominal just a bit more. Alright, in fact, I'm actually gonna, yep, boom, beautiful. Because the pelvis should be a little more wrapped around. In fact, I'm actually gonna start working on the pelvis area a little bit more. Basically, I just want to wrap around the general shape and the form like so, and I want to get enough space for the hips to actually look like they could hook in, which is their job. your hips hook in around here, and that's actually why my thigh muscles look all funky. It's because I didn't properly set that up, so now I have to come back in here and I have to rewrap my thigh muscles to that bone. That's why my hips look all over the place. Again, you don't need to know the proper proportions as much as you need to know the proper structure, because the underlying structure of the hips is way more important. The fact that this thigh pulls onto the outer area, which allows for the leg to lift up and actually allows it to push in, and the fact that the muscles on the inside here wrap underneath it. It's important because you need to be able to connect them above the kneecap without drawing too much attention. In fact, there's a lot of little muscles in the legs. Well, we're going to actually step down and around here to get to that section here. And right now I'm just going to start giving myself an indicator for the knees. I don't have a good way of doing this yet because the knees are a weird trapezoid-like shape with a divot here at the bottom, and then they come up, and then they go straight again, and then once they're done going straight, they come up again, an angle, at an angle, and then at an angle, and then you smooth them out like so. And yeah, it's still there. Now I'm going to grab my move brush because I did not move the knees forward enough, and right now her knees are locked, and that's not good posture. We want good posture, people. Just to be fair, the hips are also showing some form of deflection, so I want to remove and alter that deflection a bit, and I want to adjust the thighs so that there is some natural curvature around the gluteus, even if I haven't fully sculpted it in yet, just so that I know that the pelvis is coming up, over, and across in a cup-like shape, which still haven't fully corrected my mistake yet. On that, there we go. And in the back, the flaring down is much more extreme. Coming in with the damn standard brush yet again, and crease it and move it across. Oop. Alright, let's get these feet be shaped more like feet. They come out. Toes the general structural. Then they come to a square after the point where they come out. And then they pull out. Now we're starting to get that sock-like shape. We're going to pull this in as well. And then we're going to make the inside of the foot kind of come in and push down just a bit to create the arch of the foot. We're going to bring these guys down a bit more. And I'm going to bring up the heels. And I'm going to start working on this counterbalance. So it goes out, in, in. And so we need to pull these feet in. And I need to move this up more because the calves they follow this curvature, but they follow this curvature farther up. And the knees themselves need to be pulled out a bit because they're the start of the second counterbalance. And then these guys actually bow out as well more, so they need to be almost twisted. And so to twist it, I'm first pulling out and then I'm rotating. And so it's rotate, rotate with the move brush. And just by doing that in small little increments, I can correct my little mistakes here made with the counterbalance of the knees from one another. In, out, in again. I also need to bring my knees down more because I want to give them slightly larger femur bone. And yeah, by doing that, I'm able to make some quick adjustments, and we're almost back on track. Track. Alright. Deltoids down, I got the ribcage down, I got the torso a little more detailed than the rest of the body. I'm gonna add a navel right here, belly button, and the hip area here, it's not a straight down dip, it should actually cup and then go straight down because the pelvis is two separate bones that kind of are shaped very different. So I'm gonna come here and grab that move brush, and I'm just gonna move them in and move them out, in and move them out, move them in and move them out. We're just gonna project them forward and structure it like so, and we're gonna bring in the abdomen, bring that down. I'm gonna have to start working on some of these side abductor muscles. We'll come in here with the clay buildup brush and we'll build them in nice and slow. And they flare out too. And they flare out too, but they flare out from the sides a bit more, like so. Bring in the lats a little bit more. Anyway, we're just going to straighten this out, bring it in the neck a bit more. Now with that weird, ugly face, but everything is slowly turning itself around. Bring this in. The day I decided to film it, I probably should have just done a face sculpt because I'm better at those, but yeah, I'll probably take a break anyway in a minute. Alright, so now we have a pretty nice torso. Bring this out a little bit more because the ribs need to be there. Of course, the center of the ribs also need to be biggest at the top and taper towards the bottom, so we gotta figure out how to do that. I need to widen this out a bit more so that I'm not just pulling on the pec major and minor and some of the fat pockets in there, which I've already started to build up. In fact, we should probably discuss how these fat pockets actually work. So the fat pockets on your chest will always be on the lower section of it for both men and women, and so basically what you're going to do is you're going to cup around here. And by cupping around this area, you'll eventually form a lift, and that will allow you to figure out how you want the breast to go. In fact, they'll always lean in a little bit bigger towards the tail end of the muscle here, where it's a little more pushed out. And this will also give you proper, let's call it nipple orientation. Basically, if you just draw one ball in one center, the nipples will be pointing straight towards the camera. And the problem with that is no one's nipples point straight to the camera. They're slightly off because your chest protrudes out and wraps around, and your fat pocket is like this. It's a secondary piece underneath the general structure. So we want to get that right. And so by doing this loop, like so, and by building it up, I get to maintain that kind of structure. And then if you're dealing with a much more bustier character, which is harder, you just gotta build up more and you gotta let them go below the pectoral minor. But the way to look at it is it's following gravity. So by making these little scooping actions above and around, I get to maintain a level of crease around where I'm going to put the nipples on or the breast. And so that allows for the tissue to do so. And all by just following these small little movements up and down, I'm able to get a much more realistic and reasonable one. And just by thinning it out and then smoothing every now and again, I'm able to get a quite reasonable form. And as long as I just follow that pattern, eventually the upper space will get tighter around the ends, because this area here it can't actually land in, and I actually goofed on that about 4 behind. So just make sure you stop at where your rib cage hits your sternum. See how these are touching together like that? They shouldn't be. So I need to actually come in here and just make sure that it's looser on that end, because right here in the center of the chest where your rib cage meets, there's no pectoral muscle, because the pectoral muscle is locked into it. And because it's locked into it, and because that bony landmark is there, you want to follow these scoops. So just by scooping the inner and outer area, making the little Nike sign, and getting thin on the outside and thicker towards the center, and then thinning out again, with your hand, you can make these very nice whooping shapes, which allow you to build up the area quite nice. And once you get good enough at that kind of shape, you can just keep going over and over again. And if you want them bigger, you can come back in, and you go bigger, and they'll sag below that rib cage line, because there's only so much you can do before gravity kicks in, you know, and that's how your anatomy works. It's not going to be in there. And occasionally I'll come in here with a damn standard brush and I'll just touch up the sternum area, because, well, you want that crease there, unless something's pulling closer, and then in which case you're going to be using material mesh to resolve. And by just zooming in and out like this, we can get it there. Now, eventually I'm going to start doing these cross-hatching marks here, because it does lock in up around here, but it locks in very smoothly. And so if we continue to just follow this pathway, right, grab the move brush, we're going to have to move these girls out, because they shouldn't be facing that far into the center. That's just a small issue of my scooping method over time. It just gets there. We still want it to hang there, and hang here, and yeah, and the bigger they are, the more they'll hang. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna quit the scooping method for a little bit here, and I'm just gonna come in and we'll round them out, because the skin does eventually say, hey, you're attached to this pec. So we just bring them in like so, but by just creating that little movement, you can get them to actually have some decent overhang like normal, and yeah, you can get that kind of shape going right. I'm going to smooth out this area. I think I'm going to take a break from this, guys. I'm going to go to coding in a minute. I just wanted to get some sculpting in today, and I want to practice using OBS a little bit better, and maybe get used to doing a setup. So I think I'm going to take a break very shortly. Now the ass is too wide and too flat. She got that pancake booty. We gotta fix that. Make it roundel. There we go. That kind of fixed that a bit. Let's bring out our hips a little bit more. And let's get her structure there. Smooth it around here. There we go. We'll start working on the individual muscles of the glutes in a minute. They're a lot more complicated than the breast. They're actually probably the most complicated muscle. I think I'll do that next time I come in you. Alright, and that's part 1.